So before I get into it, a couple things I just want to like throw out. One, again, this is completely like unplanned, un what's the word? Like this is just me throwing out what I see as I'm reading the Bible. Um, my challenge to myself to read the Bible, and hopefully for you, it's just a good challenge for you. Hopefully you can keep up with me, and if you want to challenge to read the Bible and just how use me as your accountability partner because I'm using you as my accountability partner um, to read and study. Um, maybe I can teach you how to maybe dive a little bit deeper into the Bible, like get your thoughts flowing instead of just reading it and having no idea what you read, because that's what I always used to do. Or just something you enjoy watching. But I totally suggest that if you want to study the Bible more, find YouTube videos, podcasts, Spotify. Find something that you enjoy, books that makes you go deeper. There's so many different options there, but find someone you like. Find something that makes you go deeper. Um, um, because it's going to help you so much. For me, I'll just tell you, I use this app called Right Now Media that we use through our church. But I love, love this Revive School. It's Kyle Lance Martin. I'm not sure if you can find it on YouTube, but it's it's this guy right here, and he goes through the whole Bible. He has sessions on everything. Um, Goes super deep, super theological. Does such. I think my favorite thing is how he just pulls every verse out of the New Testament that goes all the way back to Genesis. As you can see, like this is what I'll watch next as I go into it. But he just he's so good at it. This is who I like. Find what's easy for you to study, and and continue to go into the Word. But maybe you will use me as just your starter to just read the Bible, and that's awesome. That's the goal. That's how you start, is just by reading it and wanting to read it, because that's what God wants us to do. Second small point, I am currently using the NIV. That's what my physical Bible is, and that's just because that's kind of that's my church. That's our base version that we use, just kind of as an all around general version. Totally use different versions. There's definitely multiple better than the NIV. I'm not saying that the NIV is the best, um, but I just like that's an all around. If you struggle with reading, because that's a very reasonable thing. The NLT, I really like the NLT Bible, and that really puts it in a lot simpler terms, um, easier to read a lot of the time. Maybe for certain stuff, in my opinion, doesn't go maybe as into depth as stuff. If I'm actually studying something, I will use. I don't actually have a King James Bible yet. I need to get one of those, but I just use my Bible app, and mainly for certain terms, if I want to know like what was the specific term that was closer to the original Bible language, I will go into the King James version and see what they used. So like bounce around between. There's a lot of versions, and basically my main three are King James or New King James, NIV, and NLT. But there's plenty of different versions to fit your suit. But as a general one, I'm going to use the NIV as I'm going through this. And lastly, I know I said through 18, but the second half of 18 goes into Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm actually going to just personally, I'm going to wait to read it until tomorrow because I don't want to read it. I read the 3 visitors part, but I don't want to get into Sodom and Gomorrah until we get into that. So I'm going to add that on to tomorrow, but that doesn't affect you. But a little more background before we get into this. So we have Abram. I'm gonna mess that up a million times. We have Abram. We have Terah, the father of Abram. Nahor, Haran. Haran became the father of Lot, which is Abram's nephew, Lot, main character. And Sarai is in that family tree somewhere. I think it's his half sister, maybe. Sarai is Abram's half sister. Something along those lines. So then, starting in 12, the Lord calls Abram. Go from your country, your people. It said in 11 that they were going to. They set out to go to Canaan, but when they came to Haran, they stopped. Now we don't know why they stopped in Haran, but I can only assume it's because that's where God wanted them to be, and that stopping there then allowed God to call Abram to go to where he was before. You know, God always has a plan in that. But this is the first of many times God predicts. I forget that I have it up here. I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. This is the first time of many that God predicts Abraham, well, specifically Abraham's son, but Abraham becoming a great nation. What a blessing, though. I will bless those who bless you and curse you, or curse the ones who curse you. All the people on earth will be blessed through you. Like, that's one heck of a calling to Abraham. Definitely makes Abram feel good. And yeah, if he says that to Abram, Abram better be doing what the Lord told him. Took Lot with him and his wife and all their possessions. Just kind of a side note, like, I love that God called Abram to do something, and he was faithful through that. But he's like, hey, I can bring my family with him. Like, I have to assume that Lot and Abram were just super close in relations. Like, they were best friends. And when God calls you to do something, I'm talking about you and me. When God calls us to do something, it's like, we don't have to do it alone. Yes, he's specifically calling me to do it, but like, why can't I bring my best friend to do that as long as I'm serving the Lord? And I just like that. And wife too. It's like, we can do missions with our spouses and family, friends. It's like, that makes it all the better. And we'll go into that in a little bit, a little more, but just a small point that I love. God cares about family. He allows his wife and Lot to go with him because God does care about that. And they set out for the land of Canaan. They finally arrived there after his father died in Haran. Able to travel through the land. There's Canaanites in the land, which we know, if we go back to God's curse to Noah's son Ham, who saw his father naked, Ham was the father of Canaan, and Canaan was kind of enemies of everyone. So the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." And I find it kind of interesting because the land of Canaan, or the Canaanites, God curses the Canaanites, or Ham, and he will be the lowest of slaves to his brothers. And then he blesses Shem, and we know that Abram was in the line of Shem. So kind of like bouncing off each other, that Ham will be the slave of Shem. The Canaanites will lose the land to Abram's offspring. That got a little confusing. Hopefully that made sense. And I love that as we go along, everywhere that Abram goes, he just builds an altar. It's like the Lord is his top priority. I know it doesn't go into what he was doing there specifically, but I have to assume like the first thing he did was build an altar to bless the Lord for what the Lord gave him. Went to Bethel, pitched his tents, and guess what he did? He built an altar to the Lord. And then he sent out again. How easy would it have been for Abram to just like be like, well, I'm not staying here long. Like, I don't have to build an altar. But that was his way of blessing or serving God, calling on God. So then we go into this famine. It kind of goes from that big picture zoomed into the smaller picture of this famine in the land. They went to Egypt, and in Egypt there's this infamous sin or problem for Abram and Sarai, because Abram created a scenario in his mind that Pharaoh is going to see, or the Egyptians are going to see you, and they're going to kill him because his wife is so beautiful. First of all, sorry for my slang, but like, holy Riz, because he's like, Sarah, you are so beautiful that they're gonna kill me to get you. Like, he was trying hard there, but yeah, he created this scenario in his mind, like this what if, that they're gonna kill me, and that's not good. So he created this scenario: say you're my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. One of many, many examples in the Bible of good intentions, but the way they go about it isn't good, and really could be it's always hard in the moment. Like, I can't uh tell off Abram for saying this, because I'll do it a million times over again. But like, if we go back, Abram just blessed, or I mean, God blessed Abram with this blessing right here. Like, is God not gonna take care of him when they hit this famine? Like, they hit hardships, and all of a sudden he's like, "We gotta take matters into our own hands, otherwise I'm gonna die." And it's like, well, doesn't God have you no matter what? Um, Kind of a very specific, topic specific thought, but just a thought. Um, so yeah, they saw that she was a beautiful woman, and they praised her to Pharaoh. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired a bunch of stuff for it. Um, I find this story very funny, serious funny, but the Lord inflicts disease on Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's just like, dude, why did you do this to us? Like, why didn't you tell me what she like? I was about to commit this sin, but she's your wife. Like, why didn't you tell me that? And he's just like, she's my sister. Oh, that's what she said. Um, yeah, I just think it's funny that he's just like, hey, how about you tell me next time? And they just sent him off because they're like, we don't want anything to do with you. Um, Something interesting that comes to my mind is how the Lord inflicts the diseases on Pharaoh, not on Abram. So it's not like Abram did the wrong thing, so the Lord's punishing Abram. For whatever reason, he's inflicting the diseases on Pharaoh because technically Pharaoh's doing the wrong because of Abram's lie. Um, and Abram like tries to pull the runaround, like, well, I didn't technically lie because she is my sister, but she's my half sister, but she's my wife. And he kind of tries to pull the runaround. Um, God's uh, I cannot think of the word. Holy cow! God's um, God's mercy is that he didn't kill Pharaoh. He just inflicted diseases, and Pharaoh's like, "Get out of here." So then they left, and they sent him on his way. Then we get into 13, going back to Abram and Lot. They went from Egypt to the Negev, um, and they became very wealthy. God being with them, they became very wealthy with everything. They had all this land. They went place to place. They went back to where he built his first altar, which is pretty cool. And Abraham called on the name of the Lord. Lot was moving with Abram, but the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. So, big picture of that is thinking, like, whoa, that's so cool that they're able to, like, family, they're able to do this together. They're able to be wealthy together and have livestock together and all this stuff, but the land couldn't support them. They saw that, and kind of my first instinct of what might happen is, well, it actually does happen, not between Abram and Lot, but their herders started quarreling and getting mad at each other because of it, um, which is bound to happen in our human nature. But I love that instead of continuing the fight, as Christians, we know that we're called to be peacemakers. And so, even though they might want to stay together, if they truly are like best friends, like um, it seems like they love each other so much, but they love each other so much that their their way of disputing this conflict is, okay, we have to separate so that we don't get torn apart even more. You know, Splitting up is bringing them closer than if they were torn apart between conflict, which is kind of interesting. And sometimes love is letting go. That was super cliche. I'm sorry. Sometimes love is letting go. Oh, that was pretty bad. But it's true. Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. We love each other. We don't want to get split. Um, so Abram, being the man he is, he's like, hey, you choose the land. Let's part company. I'll go the opposite way of you go. So Lot looked around, found a good spot, left him. Um, and it says Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. I actually missed that the first time I read that. But yeah, this is the first time we hear of how Sodom was just terrible place. The people there were wicked. Um, here's the second time that the Lord is telling Abram, "Hey, you're gonna have kids." He says, "All the land that you see, I will give to your offspring. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that anyone could count the dust." And I kind of imagine Abram as like kind of pushing this off, like, "Oh, that was a cool blessing," but just kind of a general blessing, like, "Yep, I'm gonna make you do really well in life." But when you actually get into it, or like I imagine later on, he looks back, he's like, "Oh, that's what that blessing meant. Like he meant literally all the land will be given to my offspring." So I don't know. I love how God just keeps reassuring his covenant, especially because this promise that he made to Abram that he would have a son took so long. I wonder if I could find. I don't know how old Abram was exactly at this time, but it was years and years and years between when Abram first did that from this time to when he actually has his son. Um, Took years and years and years, and over that time, you kind of start to forget what God tells you, and starts to feel like unfaithfulness. When in reality, God is faithful. It just takes it's in His time, not in our time. Um, but He keeps affirming it to Abram. And guess what he did? He built an altar to the Lord. Everywhere he goes, that's what he does. Because he lives his life to serve the Lord. And that's how we should live. And I love this poetic story of best friends, family, going off together, getting super wealthy, having to split up, but they get reunited. Um, it is such like if I had to pick stories to make a book from the Bible, it's like I would choose this story because this would be such like a dramatic book. Like, oh no, now we all have all these evil kings that I'm not gonna try to pronounce. But four kings joined forces and five kings joined forces, and they were fighting a lot. Um, King of Sodom and King of Gomorrah marched out and drew their battle lines. Four kings against five, and they fled. Some of their men fell in them, and I think it's funny that it kind of just includes this sentence right here, like, oh, by the way, there was some like they were ready to fight, but there was some tar pits, and some of the men fell in. Like, sucks to be them if that's how they have to die. Now, maybe that's how they were explaining why they lost this fight, because some of them fell into the tar pits, and they're like, "Oh, we lost a lot of men," and the rest of them fled. Maybe. Um, and they seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they also got, oh, excuse me. They also got Abram's nephew Lot. Poor Lot. He got stuck in the middle of it. He was living in Sodom. But to the glory of God, a man escaped and reported to Abram. And Abram was like, we got to go for this guy. He didn't even hesitate, or at least I like to think he didn't hesitate. He called his 318 trained men. I don't know why, but I love the specifics of it. It could have just said he called his trained men, but it specified, which is one reason why the Bible is so reliable, is because it gives you more specific details that you have in any other historical documents. It's not just a made up number. It's a historical document. Whether you believe it's true or not, it is a historical document. Divided his men, attacked them. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot, his possessions, together with the women and the other people. I promise I'll stop yawning soon. After Abram returned from defeating the kings, the king of Sodom came out to meet him. Then the king of Salem brought out bread and wine. They were very grateful. They blessed Abram, or they praised God because of what Abram did. Now remember, Sodom was sinful. It said that. I'm not sure about Salem. I'm not a historian. I don't know. But I would have to think if they're teaming up, that they're not. It does say he was a priest of God Most High. So maybe I'm wrong. But it includes this statement of Sodom met him in the valley. So they were there too, and they're hearing this praise of God. The king of Sodom was still here too, and Sodom was a sinful city, but he was here to hear this praise to God, which is just kind of interesting to think, and interesting to know, like, they had the chance to turn to God, because they realistically they should have turned to God when this happened, because God is what brought them, saved them. And Abram gave them a tenth of everything. I think that's funny. Like, Abram just won. You would think that Abram should be taking stuff. But this is another example of Abram's faithfulness to God. And the tenth is obviously like kind of that base for tithing that we have. But he didn't give the tenth of everything to God. In this case, he gave it to the people. But yet that's still an act of serving the Lord. An act of selflessness, that even though he won, Abram's like, it wasn't by me. Like, I didn't do anything. God delivered. And it says that here, praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram knew that. So he's like, I don't need this stuff. And it goes on to say, they wanted to give Abram, they wanted Abram to keep the goods. And Abram said, I have sworn an oath to the Lord that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread, not even a thread or a strap of a sandal. That's how like deep and meaningful his covenant was. He said nothing, not even a thread or a strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. He wanted to humble them by humbling himself, which is very cool. What a testimony. So he accepted nothing. which just shows Abram's faithfulness. He cares more about other people and he cares more about God than he does of his own wealth and himself. There's so much here. So then we have the big old covenant talked about for the rest of the Bible. God starts off by saying this, and Abram answers probably what's been on his heart for his entire life, because specifically in this era of the world, like your inheritance was such a big deal, and we'll see that throughout the next how many people in the Bible. It's all about inheritance, and throughout Jesus, it's all about inheritance. Um, because when Abram dies, it's all about where is my stuff going? What do I have, and where is it going? Um, so um, although God blesses him, he's like, what can you give me since I remain childless? Um, my servant will be my heir if this is how it keeps going. And then the Lord, for the third time, reassures him, but more specifically, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them." Then he said, "So shall your offspring be." Meaning, like, if you can count the stars, that's how many offspring you'll have. You can't count the stars, so your offspring is going to be infinite. But if you could, that's how many your offspring would have. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Now that verse right there, verse 6, has so much in it. And throughout the rest of the Bible, like specifically Paul in the New Testament talks about this verse multiple times. Obviously, Abram is brought up again and again, but just this verse is brought up, and it means so much to like us as Christians and faith. My goal on this video is not to get super deep into that, just because of my lack of planning and resources. But seriously, search up a video just on this, and you'll get probably hours and hours. Not probably, you will get hours and hours of content just on this. But back in this old time before Jesus, the Lord saved, or that's not maybe the right word, but we see that this is somewhat of how God behaved before Jesus. Abram showed his faith. He believed in the Lord Jesus, believed in the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. I don't know what the I don't know what the I don't know where it's found, but the verse "Believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved," or John 3:16, "For whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." It's all about faith, and Abram had faith, and so he was credited as righteousness. Let me search up a definition of righteousness, because definitions are so important, specifically when reading the Bible, because I kind of know what it means in my mind, but when you actually understand the definition of a big word, the quality of being morally right or justifiable. So Abram believed in the Lord, and he credited it to him as being morally right. Or if I substitute it with Jesus, when I believe, I am credited. I don't like that word, it's hard to say. I am credited. I'm credited as morally right. Not because I am morally right, but because God calls us to just have faith and believe in him. If I confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in my heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's the thought of, it's not by what we did, it's not by a specific action that Abram did, but Abram believed and he was credited, I got it, as righteous, as morally right, or in future terms, credited oh, that's bad. Credited it to him as salvation. So much in just those couple of words. And he also adds more. I'll give you this land to take possession. But Abram, in our human nature, even when God tells us specifically what to do, we're like, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? And Lord said, hey, bring me a heifer and a goat and a ram. Bring me these things, make an offering. He made this like, cut them in two and arrange the halves off of each other, kind of made this, what did it say? He made a passed between the pieces. He made like this path. And I love that it adds the birds of prey came down on the carcass, but Abram drove them off. Kind of makes me think like, even though Abram did this, it still took time for God to kind of do that. But Abram sat and waited so long that the birds started coming, but Abram was loyal and he drove them off because he's like, nope, this is for the Lord. Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in the country. This is God prophesying kind of Exodus. Exodus, kind of the next multiple books of the Bible. Being enslaved, your descendants will be slaves. They will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. I know for a fact, or I have to assume, that you've been asked or thought of the question, like, what if I knew when I was going to die? Like, what would change in your life? Blah, blah, blah. But I find it funny that God told Abram, like, hey, you will go in peace and be buried at a good old age. Like, Abram didn't know specifically how he was going to die, but he's like, oh, good. I'll go in peace and die at a good old age. Not just an old age, a good old age. Which we see, I think he was 90 or something in these next couples. Like, he was already old, but I just like that God adds that in. You'll die at a good old age. And then God answers Abram. He answers his question that he had. A smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants I give you this land." He lists all the lands. Interesting. Interesting. And then we have the next part. Because if we were reading this in a narrative story or in a narrative way, we're like, okay, when is he going to have his child? So it goes in. Now, she still has borne him no child, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to what Sarah said. I don't know what the time period between that last verse, between that covenant and this is, but you would think Abram's like, "No, we're gonna have a child." Now that's a pretty loaded thing to say to a mother, to a woman who can't have children, to say you're going to have children, because to them, or to Sarah, that would be false hope. And like the thought to give them that false hope would be devastating. So like that's just you wouldn't say that to a woman because you don't want to give her the false hope. Obviously God knows everything. But you would think that Abram would be like, well, hold up, like God said that we're gonna have children. But instead he agreed, and because he wanted that inheritance, he wanted to make sure that his inheritance went somewhere, especially as he crept closer and closer to death. And then, interesting to see our human nature acting up again every time. When she became pregnant, her selfishness and pride got the best of her, and she began to despise her mistress. Probably because she knew that Abram wasn't going to do anything to her because it was his child. So she probably thought that she could gain power through that, or whatever that might be, try to be top dog. And Sarah went and complained to Abram. Something that I got to point out, for me specifically, as I was reading this right now, it was so easy to read this section of 16 and play the blame game again and again and again and again. Like, oh, Abram shouldn't have did this. Sarah shouldn't have did this. Sarah was complaining. Hagar shouldn't have done this. It's like this blame game over and over and over again. But I realized that that's not what it's about. That's not the point. It's not who does wrong, who did this, who did this. It is we're all human. We all mess up. And I think that the point that I personally want to take out of this is that, specifically in marriage, each person, the man and the wife, and in this case, maybe your second wife, don't do that. It's your job to hold each other accountable, speak truth into each other's lives, and strive to always be a better godly person. Um, obviously, I can't say that Abram wasn't a godly person because he was a very, very godly person. But in different, in every situation, it's trusting each other, not blaming each other. Um, Hagar's position by serving the Lord was to submit to her. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, respect your wives. Um, what is it? The slaves, respect your masters. Like serve them with all your being. Submit to them is was that's um, her duty. Sarah's duty was to treat Hagar with um, yeah. So sorry, I should have kept reading before I went into this. Sarah said, Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I'm doing. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows, Sarah was kind of complaining to Abram, like, hey, this is your problem. And Abram just said, your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you think is best. And Sarah mistreated Hagar back. Um, she began to despise. She was supposed to submit. Sarah was supposed to not mistreat her because, you know, there's infinite amount of different things that they could have done. Not blaming them, but this is our human nature. And we all do it, and no one's perfect, but it's just always striving to be a better person, and specifically in marriage to work together and always try to be better together, and probably don't have a second wife because that makes things real difficult and lots of pride. So then Hagar left, and oh, this is power. This is so powerful. Then the angel found Hagar near a spring. He said, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress. Hagar was probably so distressed in this moment because she probably had regrets for despising Sarah, probably regrets for running away, probably terrified for what's going to happen to her baby. Um, just this stage of distress. She said, "I'm running away." The angel told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael." Gives her these commands, and here's where it gets powerful. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. I gotta find Elroy. That's what I thought. God Elroy. I'm going to replace that. She gave this name to the Lord, God Elroy. You are the God that sees me. And that's just like so powerful considering how often that we feel lost in this world, how often that we feel abandoned by people. Um, but no matter what, God is the God who sees. When we try to run away, God is always there. He sees me and he sees you. I have now seen the one who sees me. Again, that's another one that there's infinite that I could talk about. But I'm just going through it quick. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. 86 years old. Now we go 10, 11, 12, 13 years. I don't think I'm going to go into this section too much. There's a lot here. It's important. I'm not skipping it because it's not important, just for time's sake. But God made another covenant with Abram, all about circumcision. There's a lot of kind of legalistic points in this, pointing to Jesus, and this was a part of the law. The Jews practiced this. The Gentiles did not. The Jews didn't like the Gentiles because they weren't circumcised. Jesus fulfilled the law, and just because you're not circumcised doesn't mean that you're not saved in the Gentiles' perspective. But back then, when there was no Jesus, they had to act in faith, and so they had to. This was kind of the first law, I guess, big picture law. They had a lot of little laws. Talking about the law of Moses, though, you must circumcise your child. That was kind of any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. The reason that this is here is back then their faith or their salvation. I don't know if that's the right word to use in this context, but their salvation was based on their faith to God, which was shown by works and by doing what God told them. So like Abram did what believed in God, credited to him as righteousness, and in that they followed the law of circumcision, things like that. Again, told them that she will have a son. Told him again, reassured her after years and years and years. Told him again she will bear a child. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? And Sarah was 90. Also, good to note, this is when God says that you will be called Abraham, and Sarai will be called Sarah. And he tells him again about the covenant. He says you will call him Isaac. And Abraham is the good father he is. He's worried about Ishmael. And God, remember, God sees Hagar. He sees Ishmael. And he sees Abraham and his concern. So he said he will be the father. He goes on to say, like, yes, I will increase his numbers. So now on to 18. We have the 3 visitors. Just a slack section. I'm not going to go through all of 18. I'm going to skip the second half. Or we'll go back to the second half next time. But we have these 3 men, which infinite speculation. um, about angels and Jesus himself, um, based on how it says, my Lord, but this is lowercase. Um, so much speculation. I'm not going to get into that. There was three men sent by God. That's how I'm going to put it. There's three men sent by God who again told them Sarah's going to give birth. Before I go into that, just got to note Abraham was pleasing God by being a good host. He took care of them, he made them food, and took care of them. They said that Sarah will have a son. Sarah laughed at them. Sarah laughed to herself at that thought. Then the Lord said to Abraham, this is where that whole thing gets kind of confusing, because the Lord said, like, is one of those men Jesus? Why did Sarah laugh at me? Again, not going to get into that. But I will get into Sarah's doubt. Now, granted, I have to say, if there's a lot of crazy miracles in the Bible. But knowing humans, and like, I just had two baby nephews in the last year, and like, this has to be one of the craziest throw out things. God is faithful, it came true, but it has to be one of the craziest like thoughts for Sarah to think, like, I am 90 something years old, my womb has closed, she's past the age of childbearing. So she laughed. It's one of the most understandable misconceptions of someone seeing God's commands. Now, obviously, God gave them this covenant over and over again, so you would think that they would really believe it by now. But in our human nature, pretty much no matter how much God is going to tell us, it's going to be very hard for us to believe. Um, Sadly, in our lack of faith, that happens. And to add to it, she was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. And he just said, yes, you did. Like, I know. I could go into this and talk about how this is kind of our first time, not it's not the first time, seeing God knowing our every thoughts. Like, it doesn't matter what we say or do in private, because God knows our every inclination of our heart and of our mind. He knows when we doubt, even though we don't want to admit it. Things like that. But also, I like that God, in his mercy, God knows to us how crazy it sounds that she's going to have a child. So it's not like he maybe sounded a little disappointed, but he wasn't mad, like, how dare you laugh at that. Obviously she shouldn't have, because that's a little lack of faith there, but I have to assume that God was understanding, like, I know it sounds crazy. Is anything too hard for the Lord? I want that on a plaque, to be honest. I want to hang that right there. Is anything too hard for the Lord? brings me to, we're reading in Acts right now in Bible study, and Peter's in prison. The disciples are praying earnestly for him to be released. He gets out of prison and he knocks on their door, but they're like, it's not Peter. They don't even believe that their prayers came true. The reason that came into my head is just, even though we believe in God, we believe that he can do anything, we doubt so much. So much. I'm talking about myself. Doubt so much that he can do what he can do. And I just love this verse. So simple. Is anything too hard for the Lord? And it's a question. It's not just nothing is too hard for the Lord. It's asking me. It's making me reflect on my faith. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Every time I ask something, every time I doubt that he can do something, like I want to see this plaque and think to myself, like, is this my mindset? Is anything too hard for the Lord? The answer is no. It was a good day. There was a lot there. So much good stuff. I mean, it's the Bible, so there's always going to be good stuff. But I'll let you know what I do. This is my super rough, like, I want to read through the whole Bible. So I'm reading through the whole thing, going through it, working my mind so that I'm not, like, me just, I have no notes, I have nothing. I'm just saying what I see. That's what I'm doing. I'm saying what I see. One, to ingrain it in my memory. Because the more that I read it, the more that I say it out loud, I'm going to remember it. Two, I don't remember what the points were, but I read it, then I say it out loud, then I go back after this and these Right Now Media things I said. I watch these because he goes way, way, way deeper into how it ties into the whole Bible, how it ties into specifically Jesus. But yeah, I just go through a rough thing, and then use that, go way deeper. Um, I've started writing a little bit. It takes a lot longer to actually write stuff down. Um, but I've started writing a little bit because that also helps me remember stuff. And my goal by doing this, the reason that I started this is I just want to know way more about the Bible than I do because I don't know that much. And specifically when I'm teaching the youth, I want to know as much as I can to help them understand the best as they can. And I realize that importance, and really gets heavy on my heart to understand what I'm talking about, what I'm teaching them. And I know how many questions that I have, and they're going to have those same questions. I know that I'm not going to have all the answers, but I can sure try my best to help them understand to the best of my ability, to the best of their ability. So for you, I suggest, like I said in the beginning, find your thing, find your deeper study to actually go deeper because there's infinite more than what I can teach you. But I thank you for watching. Hope you have an amazing day. I'm actually going to close this in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that I get to spend with you. Anyone watching, that they can spend it with us. I just pray that you would speak through me, teach them. I pray that you would help me remember and recollect what I've learned, um, memorizing the things that happen in the Bible, and I just pray that you help me do that. And I pray for the person watching this that they would have those same blessings, that they would strive to learn more about you. Lord, I just thank you for the Bible that you've gave us, that we are able to study, and that we have encouragement and wisdom at our fingertips, Lord. And I just pray for safety and for wisdom and discernment and life through you. In your name, amen. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.